Life as a Sega Saturn gamer here in the UK was pretty rough. Although the Saturn provided me with many happy hours of entertainment with games that I'm still going on about, and for that matter, still playing to this day, there was definitely a moment when I realised the game was up for new releases. In fact, I still remember a girl at my college who knew I loved the Sega Saturn gleefully telling me about how she'd read that there were only 2 more games coming to the machine in our territory. She flippin' relished it. Which, in her enjoyment, I took to be proof that she must be some kind of simpering imbecile who was bang out of order. No offence if you're watching. But although her claim sounded nuts to me, I thought about it and realised what she'd heard could actually be correct. People used to love giving me a hard time for my love of the Sega Saturn. I even remember a kid who worked at Electronics Boutique who saw me once and came marching over to me just to say, "Alright Dibs, still supporting the number 3 console in the console race are ya?" with a huge smirk across his face. Again, obviously a simpering imbecile bang out of line, and again, no offence if you're watching. But after several years of this stuff, I got used to hearing plenty of nonsense. Like the kid who I met at art college who even in late 1996 was telling me the Saturn sucked, yet at the same time only owned an Amiga 500 and used to tell me how good it was when I was literally playing legendary games at home like Virtua Fighter 2 and Sega Rally. Once more, clearly a simpering imbecile bang off the mark. This time however, if you do happen to chance upon this video, please do take offence, because that was the take of a bona fide muppet. I joke of course. But anyway, back to the girl and her revelation about the Saturn's diminishing release schedule, because as it turns out, as of around the middle of 1998, we were indeed getting no more Saturn games on our fair shore.
Denied!
Thankfully, many months earlier, at the advice of Richard Ledbetter's Sega Saturn magazine, or who you may be more familiar with these days as being that dude behind Digital Foundry, I'd taken the step of getting my Saturn switched with both region and the all-important 50/60Hz switch. Getting this mod was essential at this point, but actually getting it done turned out to be quite an experience all of its own. Calling the numbers in the back of Sega Saturn magazine to find an appropriate person to do the work who wasn't too far away, me and my friend Lartens headed off on a drive to the outskirts of Tunbridge Wells early one Saturday back in May 1998 to meet a dude with the promise of unlocking our Sega Saturn's full potential. However, turning up at the address provided left us rather confused as we stood around an empty street wondering if we were in the right place. The whole thing felt very peculiar, but eventually a man turned up and led us to the door of what looked like an abandoned shop with a big glass display case inside that felt like it used to be an old fishmonger's or something. Beckoning us inside, we rather dubiously followed, the hope of getting our Saturn switch now falling down the pecking order somewhat next to merely hoping we were going to get out of there with our lives. In fact, as I looked around I was starting to imagine my spleen being displayed in the glass cabinet packed in ice, the dude dressed in full butcher attire while passing off my innards as cuts of finest liver and the like to any unsuspecting punter foolish enough to frequent the establishment. This video just got weird, didn't it? Thankfully, my wandering trail of thought was broken as the guy suddenly turned to the business at hand, the Sega Saturn, putting me a little more at ease as the tension started to dissipate a little. Jotting down our requests, we listed the work we wanted done, namely the 2 switches as well as the additional games he could get us an import. I was still super on edge as I handed over my Sega Saturn, but as we exited the shop and he locked up and drove off, I at least had some assurance he wasn't about to kill us anymore. Still however, although the Saturn had depreciated massively in value by this point, I couldn't help but feel nervous thinking that this was my launch day machine that at one point I'd spent 400 quid on, and he was just taking it without me knowing too much about his whole operation. But what was done, and all we could do now was wait and hope for the best. And what came next was a very uncertain period of waiting. The guy had given very vague timescales of when we could expect our machines back, and I made sure to check in with him via the phone number he provided me for any updates. However, as time progressed, his estimates came and went, and we still had no idea when we'd be receiving our goods back. He was starting to give us quite a few excuses about delays and the like, but I reassured myself that at least he was answering our calls. But still, I was starting to kind of get a bad feeling, and I couldn't help but note that quite a lot of time was passing here. Then, one Saturday he contacted me, apologising for the delay and promising that because of how much time had elapsed, he would actually deliver our machines and games to us personally the next day. Things were looking up. So that Sunday morning I waited for the call he promised he'd make, confirming a drop-off time. But as the day began passing, there was no word from him. By around midday, I was getting pretty impatient, and although I was probably annoying, I started trying to call him. No answer. So I called again, and again, no answer. At this point I was getting very agitated, and weirdly I remembered sitting down and Flash Gordon was playing on TV, and I kept going back and forth to the phone trying to call him again and again. Like I say, I was probably super annoying. But the whole day passed and he didn't answer. And now I was pretty sure I'd never see my Saturn again, and I mused over montages of the great times we had together in my head. However, as Monday rolled around, suddenly the phone rang. I rushed to it and sure enough, it was him. He was actually pretty apologetic, which was good, because this time I was planning on the shoe being on the other foot and he'd be the one fearing for his safety if I were to get hold of him. Forgetting of course who I was and that he'd easily batter me in a fight because I'm a wuss. But I digress. He assured me that he had both our finished machines and all the games we'd ordered, explaining that we could go back to the abandoned shop that very evening and get it all. Typically I had to work that Monday night, so I wasn't able to go. So it was down to my comrade Lartens and to go retrieve it all. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't drive yet, so turning to my mum for the great Sega Saturn rescue, she agreed to pick up Lartens and take him to go off and get our stuff. Poor fellow. I can imagine the conversation on the drive was not exactly flowing, but there were bigger things at stake here. But as I experienced what felt like the longest work shift that I had ever had, the clock finally ticked around to home time, and so with haste I rushed back. And what did I find? It was all there! The dude had come good in the end. There sitting waiting for me was my very launch day Sega Saturn, now equipped to run games from any region in the world, and with the ability to run things at 60 Hz. Plus, there next to the console were the games I've been desperate to get my hands on. X-Men vs Street Fighter, Dead or Alive, and Vampire Savior, complete with the 4 megabit RAM card. I fired it all up and it was glorious. The 4 megabit RAM card had the Capcom games singing, with X-Men vs Street Fighter filling my screen with the incredible animation, pyrotechnics and instantaneous load times of the arcade, while Vampire Savior strutted its stuff in much the same manner, pulling off a pretty much flawless version of Capcom's amazing coin-op. And then there was the famed bouncy action of the Model 2 conversion of Tecmo's Dead or Alive, all presented in the Saturn's high-res mode while ticking over at a silky smooth 60 frames a second. It was incredible. My Saturn felt alive, and the ability to now play these games through the modification was a shot in the arm for the old girl that was worth every penny. While Sega themselves may have walked away at this moment, declaring the Saturn not to be their future while looking to the next machine with the Dreamcast in full production, little did I anticipate how much fun I still had in store just waiting for me with the 32-bit wonder. I'd been there on day one, and I'd lived and breathed every moment of this console's life, and I was ready to make darn sure I was going to be there long after Sega Europe had packed up and taken their ball home. And in a way, things were only just getting started. Japan was a different kettle of fish for the Saturn, and with over 1,000 games released there for it, I enjoyed many years with the titles that followed. And the fact that I'm still here now playing and going on about it are a real testament to the quality of the games I found that we never got here. And there's gonna be a whole bunch more about those coming soon on this very channel courtesy of Bedger in the very near future. But what about you? Did you get your Saturn Switch for some import action? And if so, what games did you discover from your endeavours? Be sure to let us know in the comments. And as ever, thanks for watching. Take it easy gaming guys and girls, and keep it locked here on Gaming for Ages for more retro goodness soon. Laters.